That cold case you're listening to? Nasty stuff. But you know what else is a crime? Missing even a moment of whatever you're doing to go on a drink run. Luckily, there's Drizzly, the #1 app for alcohol delivery. With Drizzly, you can compare prices on the biggest selection of beer, wine, and spirits, then get them delivered in under 60 minutes. So download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today.
Welcome to the Hypothalamic Amenorrhea podcast. I'm Dani Sheriff, your host, certified fertility awareness practitioner, functional nutrition counselor, and founder of the HA Society, and of course, an HA recovery coach who has walked where you currently are walking. This is the place to come if you care about getting your period regularly. This podcast aims to educate, inform, and keep you motivated on your period and HA recovery track. So let's dive in. But last thing, nothing on the show should be taken as medical advice, so please seek the advice of your physician.
Hey guys, has it ever crossed your mind, right, through this journey where you're just rediscovering food and your body and all of these like belief shattering things are coming at you in every direction, has it ever occurred to you, I think that this is a problem that needs my help?
Yeah. Or if you're just like, why is nobody talking about this?
Yeah.
And why are we like only expecting OBGYNs or endocrinologists? Like, this is actually basic information impacting people's life. Guys,
I know.
do you ever have that moment?
Because if you have, maybe at some point, regardless of where you're at in your journey, you've thought like, maybe I want to help women with this problem too. And I think that's so common because this is such an emotional journey that when you go through something like this, it's so normal to feel like, I think that I could dedicate a portion of my life to making change in this area.
Yeah. Or even I think in my previous job, I would have loved to have this information because it just was not available in the scope that I was in, like the bubble that I was in. It just wasn't being talked about. It wasn't being talked about in depth. And so I just feel like there's so many women who are helping women, and this is actually connected. So I feel like I would have taken this course 1000% in my old job.
Okay. So what course are we talking about? Y'all, we're talking about a certification that we've created, because that's the thing, like Ashley was saying, there's no information about this, and people in the healthcare world, people who are personal trainers, wellness coaches, and people who just realize that like this is an issue that needs more coaches, more specialized practitioners in. If you're one of those people, we made the certification for you. It's called the Holistic HA Practitioner Certification.
Yes. I mean, I think we don't have to tell you guys this because this is your life. Like, this. But think of how many different symptoms you have and you've gone to somebody for it, and nowhere were they like, oh, this is possibly connected to the root cause, and that's HA. And so instead we spend so much time and energy addressing these symptoms, but they're connected. I just think it's just wild. I just think it's wild. I think it's one of those things where it's like, everyone should take this because you're going to come across somebody who potentially has this. And it's just, I don't think that we even have the numbers of how prevalent this is.
No, we don't have the numbers, but you can look around, right? So everyone who has HA now like looks around and says, oh, I think that it might be happening with that person. If you're anything like me, you've straight up asked people.
Right. Or think about like runners, they're like this is just common in the running community. So what you're saying is that HA is common in the running community. You know what I mean? Like, what if a coach, a track coach, a running coach was like, is this common in my community? Like, this would be important information to have.
So we created the certifications for all of these people in mind, so that we can talk about and help people help others with recovery from a practitioner, a diagnostic, and protocol point of view. So we've created basically it's about 30-week program, and we poured our absolute hearts and souls into it.
Absolutely.
It will cover everything from what HA is, of course, to give that important foundational information, but we are providing you with a coaching certification, meaning we are teaching you how to work with women with HA to recover their periods from every aspect of nutrition, stress, exercise, and any other factor that we've ever come across. We are putting in this certification.
Yeah. And like, we're also teaching the science behind it, right? Because it's important that we understand why certain things are being recommended, even if it goes against what has potentially been prescribed as like weight loss solves everything, right? Like, but is there science to prove that weight loss doesn't solve everything? Yes. And we've collected it all in one place for you. Plus we have a lot of we interwove all of this in there of how to address mindset changes, right? That is not just enough to know the information, is how do you guide someone in making this change, right?
Yeah, I think when we get people ask us for advice, like, because people say, I think I want to become a recovery coach. And we're like, hell yeah. And they'll ask, but how do you actually make people change? Like, how do you actually get them to implement the advice I'm taking? Because like, you can know this information till the cows come home, right? Think about your own journey. You knew this information, but why was it so hard to make change? And so that is what we're teaching.
Yes. And also like all the different things that are related to HA that you may have not known. And so hopefully this saves your client tons of money, because they're not visiting every physician under the sun for all these different, many different symptoms. Yeah, we're excited, guys.
We are excited. So if becoming a recovery coach or adding this to your scope of practice, whether you're a personal trainer, a nurse, a doctor of some kind, like this information is probably missing from your tool belt. And if you are someone who wants a career change or is interested in becoming a recovery coach, really truthfully, it's something that probably needs to blow up in the space. Like it's probably, just like health coaches did, just like life coaches did. Like, I think we need period coaches. We need more people out here on the front lines, like helping these women and making this issue more mainstream. We've seen that it has been a way to build a healthy practice. So there is no shortage of this issue, which means we need other women out here with this information. So if it's something that you've thought about, it's probably worth considering.
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things that we're having to re-educate an entire, our generation, the generation before us. You know what I mean? Like, this is massive re-education and introduction to body literacy, the menstrual cycle, what's normal, what's not normal, you know what I mean? Like, what's just all the things. It's like, hey, if like we want this to be a normal thing that we talk about, then like there has to be people that are willing to just kind of like guide people through it.
Yeah. That's all we're asking. So check it out, guys. Go to the website. You can download the syllabus where we've given an outline of everything that we're going to cover. So you can kind of dive deeper into what we're doing, learn more about the program, how it's conducted. That's at the hasociety.com/certification. You can also book a discovery call and have a call with us and talk about whether or not it's right for you. So Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll talk to you later.
Bye.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the HA podcast. We have a guest. It's both Ashley and I. That's why I say we. Ashley and I are both here today interviewing to hear the recovery story of Kailen. Welcome to the show, Kailen.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah. Before we press record, so I don't actually know your story in depth. So I'm kind of going to be hearing it for the first time. Ashley knows it, and so is probably has a bunch of things that she's excited for you to share.
Yeah.
But it was implied that this is going to be an amazing story. So now my expectations are through the roof. So Kailen, welcome to the show, and I would love to kick off by just telling the audience a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, your stats, age, things like that.
Sure.
Who are you?
A big question. I am 15 years old. I just moved from Connecticut to Las Vegas. And I enjoy yoga. I like crafting. I like music. I like dancing. Many things. I don't know. I'm kind of a freak when it comes to research. I love new knowledge. And I'm pretty much obsessed with cyclical living at this point.
Okay, so there's not going to be a ton of 15-year-olds. I don't know. Are they? Like, maybe they're listening because...
I was just saying this. Like, I was like, what if this is the future of the next generation at 15 in high school being like, hold up, I do want to cycle. There's more to cycling.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Well, early on in the podcast, like episode 6 or something, I have a 16-year-old.
Yes,
Chloe
I remember
Bambini, I believe. Yeah. And I remember I was like so new to podcasting, and I was all just like, so is the drama in American high school like the same as it is on TV? That's what I was interested
I heard
in.
that podcast episode. I loved. I completely resonated with her story. I thought it was so funny that you asked that.
Yeah, I remember it. I'm like, side note, I'm completely fascinated by the American school experience. So I always ask, I'm always like, did you go to like pep rallies?
Oh my God.
I'm really interested in it. So we won't get sidetracked by that. But so that's cool. So you have a lot going on. I feel like when I was 15, I was like about to finish high school and just like boys or something. So that's cool. Okay. So what happened? You're on the HA podcast. You obviously had HA at some point. You're obsessed with cyclical living. Like, what happened?
I mean, my whole life changed. I don't know. So, I mean, I can go from the beginning of this journey if you'd like.
We'd love that.
Okay.
Sorry, I had a mouthful of coffee.
I think of the beginning or the start of my journey when at the beginning of 2020, I had this urge to take care of my mental health more. I was so tired of like years of depression and anxiety and PTSD. So I remember I was researching the correlation between the brain and gut health in hopes of like answers, trying to change my mental state by making lifestyle changes. And in retrospect, I'm not surprised, but more so disappointed that even in my extensive research, nowhere did I ever see mentions of the menstrual cycle or cycle syncing at all, which I feel like could have saved me a lot of heartache if I was aware of the impact of your cycle back then. But anyways, I'm homeschooled, so I pretty much had all the time in the world to obsess over food and calories and exercise. And I began incorporating daily movement into my routine at the beginning of 2021. And I found a genuine love for yoga. I changed up some of my food choices. I was eating things like more protein and fats and plants. all good intentions at first, honestly, but I still always felt inadequate, like I should be doing more. I had this constant worry of being quote unquote unhealthy, which hindered a lot of my progress and my well-being. But I look at this now as merely like the way we've been conditioned to think about health here in the West, like it can become toxic to your system if you're not aware of it, for me at least. But um this is when I felt this thing like I had to prove my worth. I was always fighting to convince myself that I was worthy of simply existing, because at the time, existing and just being in the moment didn't seem like enough. Like I always should be doing something and chasing the next big thing. But practicing yoga and being meditative in anything I did especially helped with this. But unfortunately, the part of me that would tell me I'm not good enough got the better of me. And that's when I discovered cardio and towards the end of 2021. And honestly, when I lost the sense of magic that kind of came along with why I began that journey in the first place, it was no longer fun. And so I think I've always had an HA mindset, and it only became full-fledged HA when I began acting on those thoughts by excessively exercising and restricting my food, finally developing a pretty severe eating disorder, orthorexia. And I've always had body image issues for as long as I can remember, since early childhood. And always thought I was overweight. So I would, which I never was in my life. So I convinced myself that if I stopped this routine of what I thought was healthy, like heavily exercising, and I always thought I was overeating, so I would cut down my food intake as much as possible. I thought if I stopped this routine for even a second, this very disciplined routine, my depression would come back instantly. I would gain weight instantly. And I was more scared of that than anything, because I know how easily I can kind of fall into that slump and become addicted to that just as easily as I became obsessive over exercise. And next thing you know, it was like walls up. Nobody could interrupt my eating times, my workouts. I'd shut out my family, the world, rationality, and most importantly, like the sacredness of my womb for doing what society deems acceptable. Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
I was so fearful. And after years of my autonomy not being all completely mine and taken advantage of, finally being out of that harmful situation for good, I craved control over everything. Like, I thought that was the sole definition of individual power, and it was attractive. It was something easy. I used it to cope with the fact that I'd never had it until then. Like, I had to make up for never having it, as if it was like a gift to myself, hence the extremely regimented lifestyle. But I lost my cycle at the beginning of 2022 after just over a month of doing HIIT cardio workouts. I became more restrictive by working out twice a day. Twice a day for 3 hours altogether, 5 days a week, and continued restricting my food until eventually I adopted a vegan diet, only eating 2 meals a day and not eating after 5 p.m., so fasting as well. And within 6 months, I dropped, I'm guessing, about 38 pounds. I never weighed myself, but for reference, I'm 5'1", and my starting weight was around 135. So after losing weight, I was at about 97 to 99 pounds. And then, of course, on top of all of this, kind of the mental, emotional stress of all of this was suppressing like years worth of trauma from just coming up to the surface. And I ultimately became so unconfrontational to my mind and my body. Yeah. But I didn't think much of it at all. I didn't think much of my missing period. And I was even excited at first to get what felt like a break from my repetitive experience with like debilitatingly painful periods in the past. So I'd often joke about how I didn't have a period. And of course, like I certainly did not connect it to the fact that I was operating in such a stressed and restricted, out of balance lifestyle. And then in June of 2022, I felt this urge like in the base of my stomach to delve deeper into exploring my feminine energy. And then in retrospect, I actually look at this time now as when there was a genuine urge to take charge of my health. It didn't seem like it was myself who wanted this, like the faux self that I had created definitely didn't want this for me, but it felt so much deeper and most importantly, safe. So I went with it. And I mean, I found deep reverence for the divine feminine and discovered and loved how integrated the menstrual cycle was in living in alignment with our bodies. So then I was like, wait, I am admiring this thing as if it's like mythology or folklore when I could have it. Like it was my birthright to bleed and to be cyclical. And so I wanted to bleed more than ever. Like I was listening to a podcast, Fundamental Feminine Wisdom with Melissa Sanger. I highly recommend, where I discovered the female athlete triad, or Red S. And I was like crying, panicking, and shaking with fear for what this meant. I felt so many things. I felt betrayed, like everything I ever knew was wrong, that I had failed my body and my womb. And then I remember one day in particular, it was a Thursday night. I was trying to get to sleep and I was so frustrated. And my heart was racing, like my heart was beating so fast. I could feel it in every inch of my body. And it was there that I actually became aware of just how frail and weak my body really was. And then the next morning, I decided to not work out, which was a torturous decision. And I just spent the day like questioning everything. I asked myself, like, what was I doing? Why was I knowingly abusing myself, never giving myself time to rest? I finally confronted the fact that I had a full-blown eating disorder and was extremely underweight. I was sobbing for hours, like hours on end. And then I eventually decided, I was like, okay, it's over. And I voiced that to myself. I said it out loud. I was like, okay, it's over. That I would no longer do cardio. And it's a bigger deal than it seems for us HA women. And then shortly after I began researching more on HA and discovered Dani and the HA Society on YouTube and officially wanted to pursue this uncomfortable, amazing, very much worth it journey of recovery. And then, within 4 months of all in coaching with Ashley, I completely rearranged my life and mindset, and I'm continuing to do so. And I bled a healthy bleed. And now I'm here, I'd say, reborn into my feminine essence, working on ovulatory cycles. And then also I'm currently on my second recovery period as we speak.
Nice.
Yeah.
I need to send you a mug. I have you on my list.
Oh my gosh, I would love that. Yeah.
So, okay. There's so much in this. I can see why Ashley was like, oh, just wait till you like talk to Kailen. What I want to know is how you, at what point when you were like, you were figuring out, you're obviously very tuned in, you're obviously absorbing a ton of information. And it sounds like you just made decisions and then did the decisions. So what parts were challenging? Like what parts were hard?
Well, I mean, it was like my world turned upside down. So pretty much everything, but specifics I'd say was confronting the fact that I'd pretty much been lied to. Like that, these things that are like about food, especially, that were promoted, this false idea of health through the diet culture and diet industries. And so confronting that, like, was super surreal because I had completely kind of changed who I was for that. And it was like I created this whole faux self. Like, for example, I grew up eating everything, especially Filipino food. It was my childhood. And so suddenly I grew up a bit and become a little more aware of the world. And nowhere did I ever see ethnic or cultural foods being promoted as beneficial. A lot of the time they were demonized. And so you're just told to eat broccoli and chicken breast instead. And so coming back to eating the foods I grew up with, especially coming out of a vegan diet, and my Lola's cooking was something so special that I've gained in recovery. And I just know my child self is like so happy every time I eat my culture's food. So yeah, the food, just relearning how to eat has been so difficult and so amazing at the same time. It feels like permission, like I fully have permission to eat what I want. And then also listening to my body. Like I went all the way on one side of like a huge bowl of veggies, barely any fats, barely any protein, barely any carbs. And then kind of got so sick of cooking, I would eat takeout. And now I'm finding my healthy medium in the middle. I'm like, okay, I feel sick eating that, and I'm completely undernourished eating that. So here's what I actually like. So yeah, overcoming a lot of my false beliefs and ideations behind food was probably the hardest part, because I could do it. I could stop moving at any point. Like, tell me to not work out, okay. Like, it's kind of a whole routine to get it started. But eating is something you have to do every day, non-negotiable. So that was the hardest part, I think.
Yeah. It's like you have to do it a bunch of times throughout the day. You are confronted with it. You can't just like take a day off thinking about it in some senses. So what was there any elements of it in the beginning or even up until now that you sometimes feel even pushback on? Like, mentally, what do you ever still question any part of this, or are you just completely like, life changed, I'm gonna preach, I'm gonna start the cult kind of thing?
Literally. Yeah. But now in my life, I'm so happy to say that I completely believe, I don't believe many things, but I believe in my body. I believe in women's bodies. I believe in, what our bodies are actually doing, science and stuff like that. So, but a few months ago, yeah, I was having doubts for sure. Every day I'd be like, doubting everything I did. I was the person who would set a 10-minute timer every time I sat down because I had to get up every 10 minutes. Like I was crazy, y'all. So
I have a question then. Because like whenever we did I think I even did your discovery call because your mom was on. I love meeting, like I just feel like I've gotten to meet her family. I've never met her Lola. We talk a lot about her. But you know what I mean? And like you were definitely like vegan at the time. And I know I approached it softly, but what was your first thought of when I was like, okay, we don't eat meat, but would you consider eating fish? Like that first kind of like introduction of like, this is potentially the path it's going to take. Were you like resistant, or were you like, man, I'm not going to do that? Like this chick thinks I'm going to do it, but I'm not going to do it.
No, like I am a very determined person. So when I want something, like I'm going to work for it. And I knew, because I remember I told you, Ashley, I was like, honestly, me being vegan was kind of like the last string of, not the last, but one of the strings, like holding my eating disorder on. So it was just a way for me to restrict and have an excuse to restrict. And I remember that was the beginning of August. It was an amazing time in life, honestly. But I journaled literally 6 pages talking about how I was not gonna be vegan anymore. Like, and I don't know, I mean, this whole experience has been coming back to my roots, and I know, like, I think about it in the way that, okay, my ancestors, like, in the Philippines, they're, diving for their fish. Like, I'm not genetically made up to be vegan. Like, let's be real.
The HA Society is taking clients. Coach Ashley and I work one-on-one with HAs, as we call you, to help you figure out a plan and, of course, implement it and stay accountable. Whether you've worked with a health practitioner already and you just want to stay accountable and strategic with the plan that they've laid out for you, or you want to start from scratch looking at all the aspects of your recovery needs and to create a game plan to reach those needs, then we are definitely your girls. When you sign up to work one-on-one with one of us, we're going to go over your history, your biggest obstacles, ensure that we're taking into account your specific goals, and start making a plan to reach them. So those goals could be getting your period back, could be getting pregnant, could be getting back to exercise or sport, or simply working on your mindset around your body image and long-term recovery. We also can teach you the fertility awareness method. So if you want to learn that so that you have the skills you need to go out into the world on your own without fear of getting HA again, we have got your back. So our coaching packages are either weekly or bi-weekly and only a month at a time commitment. So you're not paying tons and tons of money for 5-6 months. It's month to month, which is awesome. Makes perfect sense for period recovery, right? So to learn about other women's experiences working with us and to apply for a coaching spot, plus ask any questions that you might have before getting started, just go to thehasociety.com/coaching.
And I was undernourished. Like, my bones were cracking, girl. Like, I needed meat, I needed fish, I needed everything. So yeah, I kind of came back to a more rational thinking and was like, okay, like nothing bad's gonna happen if I eat the fish. And it was such a blessing because then I got to eat all my culture's food again, which is, I mean, the best part.
Yeah, that was something that was really important to you, that in your path to being healthy, you had like cut off like your Lola's cooking, you know what I mean? Just everything that you're actually really proud and connected to.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Dani has this theory of like, well, it's not a theory, it's probably real. And we're, about of like health in quotes for everybody that's listening, being like this whole mindset where we, like don't ever stop and ask, well, is this actually what I think, what I believe? Is this logical? Is, these types of things. And so it's very interesting that I feel like deep down, like you were ready to reconnect to like all this really like nutrient dense foods. It's almost like you just needed an excuse.
Yeah, totally. It was, I mean, it felt so much deeper. Like how you said it, deep down, it was just so much bigger than me. And it was something that I really couldn't deny. So yeah.
That's a phrase I've heard a bunch, sorry, in the context of this, is so much bigger than me.
Mm-hmm.
I love hearing that. And I feel like it means something slightly different for everyone.
Yeah.
What does that mean to you?
For me, that definitely means healing the past generations, healing the future generations, like healing my womb and, my younger self from, I won't get into it, but there's so much trauma to my womb from childhood, and knowing that it's so much bigger than me, I'm like, yeah, this is involving my child self. This is involving, the women before me who couldn't express themselves creatively or be loud or be, like go-getters. They couldn't do that. And then the future generations to know that, yeah, like your body is so sacred and it's magical. Like, hello, it's pure alchemy. The fact that like we are so magical, we can produce and manifest and like live differently in all these different in the 4 seasons of our menstrual cycle. And so it's just, I knew that it was so much more important. Like it's it's something, I mean, it's hard to explain, but it just feels important. Like deep down, it's so important.
Yeah. So when you said a couple of things, and when you said, I'm like writing them down because like, oh my God, that and that. Okay. The whole like it's pure alchemy thing. It's like it's magic. I've heard people kind of be like, yeah, like I get that it's magical, but like also just science. But no, because we still have not been able to like perfectly replicate what the body can do on its own natural devices. You know what I mean? Like, yes, we have treatments that help people get fertile, but it's still not perfect. And yes, we can keep babies alive in the NICU, but have you seen what that involves? And we, like, our body innately does that. It is the perfect chemist, is the perfect pharmacist that knows how to create the perfect doses out of the perfect things. Our job is just to give it some fuel, and then it will do the rest. Like, it is crazy.
Yes, like we can grow a pair of eyeballs. That's freaking weird.
Oh, when you get your first, like when you're pregnant and you go into the 20-week ultrasound where they like, it's the longest ultrasound you do. And they measure all of the parts to make sure everything's like looking hunky-dory. And you just see like a full on spine inside of and you're like, when did that happen?
I know, it's freaky. I mean, I love them. I mean, I totally believe, like to think from the intellectual and intuitive, like I don't think they can exist without the other. And so I know calling it, magical and can be kind of woo-woo to some people, but I mean, it's honestly, it's kind of more fun to like have a cool relationship with the moon as well, like with your cycle stuff.
It's actually just like also more fun. So
yeah.
I like that. And then also you touched on really quickly that I actually love, and this comes up a lot. So this is just like a little bit, this has probably not a lot to do with your story, but I'm actually the queen of tangents. You said something about like, I'm Filipino, like this is like my culture, my heritage. Like I'm not a vegan. Like I'm not designed for that.
Yeah.
So that actually comes up a lot from me in practice with different people. We have clients all over the world, right? So it's actually really interesting to have like clients from more tropical areas and then comparing what they need and what things look like for the ones from like Iceland.
Right. Yeah.
And I have had to kind of explain to people like, hey, you're eating like a lot of lettuce and you're Icelandic, and I think you should like just be eating penguin.
Literally get some fish in you.
And it's like obviously not to like extreme. I'm not like go for like full like that's probably the next fad diet is like eating for your ancestry or whatever. But I think it makes a lot of sense that like we're all a little different in that way. And like that's why some cultures do better on a higher carbohydrate or a higher protein or a higher fat. And so it's kind of cool that you also like you really was like, okay, what's everything about me that makes me me? I'm this female and I'm in this life and I have this culture and this is my history and this is where I'm going and this is what science says and this is what like woo-woo people say and I want to incorporate it all and create like my own opinion on what I need and what works for me. And I love that about your story.
Yeah, completely. Just like really finding who I am and who I want to be going forward, for sure. I mean, being 15 in it of itself is like a whole identity crisis, and then HA on top of it. So
Stop. Stop. No way, dude. You're good. Okay. I want to just check in quickly with Ashley while she's here. Are there any specific things that you feel like that, because I know that you know Kailen so well, like what does she need to be telling us?
So on the back end of things, right? So I love getting this perspective, like her perspective and then my perspective. You know what really made her really interesting was that so obviously she dove in and she was like, okay, I'm willing to try anything, which was really exciting, right? So whenever we first started, I mean, she would make the most beautiful meals. I'm like, oh my gosh, I need to take pictures of this. We're going to use this on our like website. We're gonna put this in all of our things. Like, sweet, we already on our food blogger. Like, we have it, right? I mean, gorgeous. And so what's interesting is that we think that we're so different, but we're actually all kind of the same, right? Like I see very much similarities. Like my food used to be so beautiful. It used to be colorful. I put so much effort into it. If I wanted chopped, I made time to make the chopped, you know what I mean? Salad and all these things. And she really dove in. I mean, she would add in meat. She would add in like a whole fish, like her Lola would make her a giant, fish. And if she put it on there, and I'm like, where do I get these meals? Right. And
yeah. Okay.
Right. It was just, I was like, where do you get this? Like, this is beautiful. You know what I mean? Like, what tropical place are you at? Like, what's going on? And her temperatures were really high. She's one of those clients that have really high resting basal body temperatures. And it's really interesting because when she dove in, she really did ramp up her food. And so this isn't the first time I've seen it. I've seen this now with multiple clients now, clients that are willing to jump in really, they don't start off with the erratic temperatures. They don't start off with the low temperatures. They start off with like, do you have a slight fever temperature kind of going on?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just because she was willing to eat so much. But she was eating so much. And then she hit that point that we all hit where you're like, I can't keep cooking and eating. I'm so full. And like for her, she did have this little identity crisis where she was like, well, what if my meals aren't this beautiful? What if I don't have a million veggies? What if my plate isn't just like this abundant, beautiful thing that I was taught that health looks like, right? And then we really had to get down into this place of like, girl, we just got to get calories in, right? So then like we could see this shift of beautiful lashes and then like not so cute, just getting the job done. And then she recovered. And now the important thing that we're at now is now she's like sick of these super kind of probably blander compared to what she was making before. And now we're like incorporating back in like the veggies and the fruits and the things, just because that's what she enjoys, but now like returning with like a different mindset, right? So before it was beautiful volume veggies. Then it was like just nutrient dense, really, and then now we're like transitioning back. And so I just think it's a beautiful picture of like this ebb and flow that like sometimes to recover, we have to step away from what our plate should look like. Yeah.
Yes.
So it was just beautiful to see that.
Yeah, you explained it perfectly. Yeah.
That was the timeline. I really like seeing it, and I've seen it myself too. Yes, you go from really meticulously like curating meals, right, to getting over it, and which is huge progress, whether we know it or not. I think sometimes we're like, I'm over this. But it's actually good that the novelty is wearing off and that you're actually just kind of like, look, like food isn't the way of my life. Because in some way, although food is the spice of life, in some ways it's true, right? And if evolution could have figured out a way for us to get rid of eating and to get rid of sleep, it would have, but hasn't been able to figure it out. So we just have to do it. And it is in the way of like us doing stuff and having, you know, like staying busy. And so of course, like we found ways to make it fun because it tastes good. But I think there's something just so like normal about most of the time seeing your food as a fuel source and just being like, this will do. And when we are in like starvation or when we're in HA, you know, that food focus you think is normal or you think is just you, but it's a food focus because you're hungry. And as you become fed, it's kind of more of just a pain in the butt. And that's great.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. I thought I was, letting myself down by not being as hungry or not eating my like 5 meals a day. But I realized that exactly the ebb and the flow, like nothing is stagnant, and thank God it's not, because I mean, life would be boring. And I'm so glad that I can go back into eating the foods that I genuinely like, that make me feel good without a restrictive mindset and just eating because I'm hungry. Yeah, for sure.
What's interesting is for the certification, I've just been diving in. Leptin keeps popping up. Leptin's going to be like my life, like hormone, you know what I mean? I'm just going to be that leptin nerd. So there's actually this study that shows that pleasure from food is not fixed. So all you who think that you're a foodie, maybe not. It's not fixed. So pleasure from food is not fixed, and it's actually influenced by leptin, your satiety, your energy intake, your energy status, that like pleasure from food. So, you know what I mean? So I'm like, I don't really know if I'm a actual foodie anymore, but had you asked me back in HA, that would have been like my number one trait. Like, I'm a foodie. I love food. I love dining out. I love going to fancy, you know, like experiences, like food just blogs, vibe, like a glass of wine, whatever, that appetizer, you know what I mean? Like I thought that I was like, honestly loved it. And now I'm like, meh. You know what I mean? I'm like, am I a foodie? Which kind of spirals into this identity crisis. Like, well, what do I really like? That everyone has to go through. Like, do I actually really like cauliflower rice? No, I don't. I was just hungry. But yeah.
Same thing happened. I mean, yeah, exactly. It all comes back to leptin every time.
When you work with Ashley, it always comes back to leptin. It's hilarious. Stop. But true. Yeah, like realizing how much of what we thought was our personality is actually just like physiology. When you are fed, and only when you're fed can you find out who you really are.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yes, like actually, that's probably why we have so much relearning, rediscovering, and why this is so quote unquote traumatic is because like you literally realize all of these habits, behaviors, mindset is actually not me. It was influenced by my self-induced environment. You know what I mean? Which brings a whole other level of like weirdness, but like you'll have to like rediscover, you know?
Yeah, totally. It's like when you finally start feeding yourself enough to keep you alive, then you can finally start living and find what you really like, what foods you genuinely enjoy, and what movement you genuinely enjoy. And yeah, life has been brighter, I'm telling you, these past 2 months. Like, I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah. This has been great. So many just like little nuggets, and we can see how just the process of it for you, Kailen, it's like, it's not really about the period. This for you has been about less like reconnecting with all these different parts of your life. And this is the best. This is why we do this. I love stories about I got my period and I could have my baby and that would make me happy. But we extra love like refinding yourself, rediscovering yourself, and just like getting getting yourself back. Like that's what it's all about. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you sharing this story with us. If there was anything that you could share or would say for anyone listening who's still kind of going through all of this goodness, I don't know what is, I'm putting you on the spot with this, but I feel like there's something that you would love to share.
I mean, I'd love to hear this. When I was getting into a more restricted lifestyle and diet culture, I would have told myself personally that you can live in the most optimal and quote unquote healthy way when you live in a balanced way, and look to your menstrual cycle. Research about the fact that you are always in a menstrual cycle. Research maybe the more woo-woo things like lunaception, the way that the moonlight affects our womb. Like research the way that leptin affects your hunger cues. Research it all, because if you're anyone like me, information is like power. And honestly, like, I mean, cyclical living has changed my life, and I know that I'll continue, practicing fertility awareness method for the rest of my life until menopause do us part. Like, I'm so ready for this life.
To do fam from 15 to like 50 is going to be like, you're going to have like a decade and a bit on most people. So
yeah.
That's great. That's great.
Wild. I mean, like, could you imagine how like we done that?
I can't. That's crazy. I love it. I love all of it. This is so good. Kailen, thank you.
Thank
Ashley,
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley and Dani, for putting resources out there. So many free resources as well, like for hopefully young girls like me as well who have irregular or missing periods. I mean, harness your cycle.
I love harness them. Yeah. Harness your cycles, guys. All right. I like it. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Guys, thanks for joining. And I cannot wait to speak with you all next week. But for now, harness your cycles. Bye.
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 Thank you so much for listening today, guys. Please subscribe to the podcast, and if you could head to iTunes specifically and leave a rating or review, that would help so much, because it makes it easier for other people with HA who are Googling around to find the podcast really easily. So if you do that, you're doing a service to all of the women.
92% of households that start the year with Peloton are still active a year later.
92% because of a bike?
Not just bikes. We also make treadmills and rowers.
Oh, let me guess, for elite athletes only, right?
Nope. It doesn't matter if you're an avid exerciser or new to working out. Peloton can help you achieve your fitness goals. 92% stick with it. So can you. Try Peloton bikes, tread, or row risk-free with a 30-day home trial. New members only. Not available in remote locations. See additional terms at onepeloton.com/home-trial.